Good evening, everyone. Wow, that's going to be hard to beat. But I'll try. My name is Clara. I am a psychotherapist by profession, and I'm here to talk about social justice and marginalization, but with maybe a little bit of a more updated view on it. So bear with me as we get started. Alrighty. I can do this. All right. So to start off with, when they initially asked me about this topic, I was first very excited because this is something very close to my heart. I'm in the social work field. I work with a lot of the impoverished population in the United States, and I get to see how social injustice happens every day. And I see that here in this modernized world. I can also see how this is far more impactful in countries where the modernization isn't there yet. And then I felt really sad that in 2019, we're still talking about this. The social justice just hasn't happened. We're still talking about it. And the thing that's even more sad for my generation is that we saw a great deal of change. We saw a great deal of movement in justice for women. By the time it was my generation, I was happy that I had the opportunities that I had. The road that Periyar had paved for the previous generations that led to my generation having the empowerment that we did. But right now, though, a lot of our rights are being challenged in 2019. And that makes me even more sad that we came this far, we moved forward, we're trying to break barriers, and we are now realizing the barriers that we have, that we may have not seen, or the barriers that are being put in place now to take us backwards. And that is pretty much what I'm going to be talking about. All right. This is just a definition about the marginalization, which I'm pretty sure everybody here knows. When a group is marginalized, they do not receive the same rights as the other people or the dominating people in a society. And that could be that it's within a gender. It could be a Caucasian male versus a colored male. It could be a male and a female, or even within the females, depending upon where you come from, an immigrant female versus a non-immigrant female. And so you can be marginalized depending upon where you are. So you can be the top of your Indian class in India, and then you come here to a predominantly Caucasian environment, you're the minority. And so it really doesn't, I wouldn't say it's based on where you are. Your environment marginalizes you. And the more important part of that is, how do we take the marginalization away from all those environments? Not where you are, but just in general. As a humanist, it shouldn't be anywhere, and not just where you're living. So coming to this. So as I was saying, I had the great privilege of being in a generation where women were empowered. You know, we were given the opportunities to do whatever we wanted. My parents said, you can study whatever you want in school, do what you need. And I was given a lot of the freedoms that maybe my predecessors didn't have, which is awesome. But some of the newer, maybe in our last election, we figured out was that in the United States right now, since 1989, we've had 45 presidents. Men, 45. Women, 0. So that should show us something. We're probably, for the longest time, I always said, we stand as examples of like modernization and women's rights and everything. And then I had to stop during the last election and say, hold on, I shouldn't say that anymore. I'm probably not in the right to say that anymore, because it shows that in all this long time, hundreds of years of time, and we are given all the rights on the surface, but not anything above that. And that is something that we should take into consideration. Consideration. All right. I'm going to use this here. So women have broken barriers in many fields. They get to work wherever they want, mostly. They can apply jobs. And there are great things that the society has put in place. And they say these are laws and regulations that protect us. It says we're entitled to equal pay. Do we get that, ladies? Nope. Okay. They say that we're supposed to have an environment free of sexual harassment, and I'm not even going to ask that question because I know the answer. Equal opportunity based on gender and race. Do we, and when I say gender, do we have the same opportunities as men who apply for the same positions as we do? No. And now I say race. Do I have the same opportunities when I'm a woman of color and a person of non-color apply for the same position? And the answer again is no. And so on the surface level, we have it all. But as we peel what Tante Paria used to say, the onion, the vangayam, then you get to see things more that there's really nothing there. And obtaining promotions. And we all work in the fields, and we are here in the academic fields and big organizations and government departments. Promotions. Do they happen the way they're supposed to? Is it a lot of the times based on the merit or commitment that you put in? Or do you wait an extra 3 or 4 years before you get your promotion? And you're not really sure why you haven't gotten your promotion yet. And maternity leave. Maternity leave. So I'm kind of a younger mom. And until this happened to me, it wasn't an issue for me. I never thought about productive health in women because I thought productive health was having hospitals and doctors and sanitation and, the right to bear children and so forth. But maternity leave is part of that. And anybody want to just guess what is the maternity leave policy in the U.S.? How much time are you supposed to have? How many weeks are you supposed to have paid leave when you give birth to a child? Another human being. 2 weeks? 16, I heard some 16. 16 weeks is unpaid through FMLA. They're just basically saying, we will be nice and hold your job and not give it to anyone for 16 weeks if you choose to go unpaid. Right? And being also middle class, I don't know how many people can just go unpaid for 16 weeks, but that affects the most marginalized people here. The poor, colored women who are working class, who cannot afford to go without a 2-week paycheck, unpaid, right? You can take the 16 weeks, but can you pay your rent? Can you pay for your food? Can you pay for other needs that you have? So, the paid leave in the U.S. is 0 weeks requirement. Your company, your organization may have a policy where they have different, some may have 4, some may have 6, some may have 12, some may have even more, and some may have none. But the law itself mandates none of paid. But you will, under the FMLA law of 1993, you can go and be out for 16 weeks and still assure that you have your job. But I can tell you this, because I was working in a hospital when this happened, my job got reassigned when I went on leave. I could have said something under FMLA. My job got reassigned because they needed somebody to do my job, and they reassigned my job. And the HR basically said, we're supposed to give you a job, not your job, when you come back from maternity leave. And I said, oh. And at the end of the day, I was like, all right, fine, put me in another department. I don't care. It's okay. But I didn't get my job back. And I'm not to say that I wasn't I had a job. I'm a licensed professional. I had a job that I could have kept, but I didn't get my job. They took my job away. And so if that was the case for someone who was in an organization and in a hospital, I can only think what it would be for someone else who has a retail job or who has a job at a fast food restaurant or a consumer place where they need more turnover. Are you really holding somebody's job and position for them? And coming down to the next part of this is that now, and this is more the reason that I wanted to talk about, this is our abortion laws are being challenged. And many of you might have seen in the media that some of them are going by the trigger laws of their own states, where they are going back to pre-Roe. And they're basically saying that the woman doesn't have the right to choose abortion in those states. You can go to the state over. And it's, again, going back to the fundamentalism of religion. They're going against abortion. It's not appropriate for a woman to have an abortion under any circumstances, no matter what the reasons are. And that's what some of these other states are going, especially the ones Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Michigan, Mississippi, New Mexico. And some of these states are reverting back to the rules because nobody's challenging it right now. Our political leaders are not challenging it. And in some cases, they're saying it's okay for them to challenge the basic rights that we've already been given. And saying that women don't have the right to do this. You don't have a choice. And I just kind of highlighted the challenges of having children here, finances and leave and everything else. And now they're saying, if you choose not to have your kid, you have to have your kid. You get pregnant, you have to have your kid and support your kid and take care of everything else. And not to include all the other crimes that happen where women don't want to have their kids because a crime was committed against them. And so I've been given my 2-minute mark, so I'm going to go really fast. This is a map of the United States where there's only a few states that have no limits, and that's the gray. So you can look and see that, the rights of women are restricted by state rules, some to the benefit of the women, but a vast majority not to the benefit of women. And the last part was, Tande Periyar had talked about women's rights, and in his women's rights, he talked about everything from the right to make your own choices, the right to pick your partners, the right about chastity and relationships and having kids, and choosing to not have kids if you don't want to have kids. He actually encouraged population control. He said, if you choose not to have a kid, that's your choice. You should be allowed not to do that. You shouldn't say that, have all the kids you want for population control. That was part of his thinking, too. And so coming from the basis of Periyar, we're like, okay, hold on, give us our rights. Leave us alone. Let us make our decisions, even in relationships. And part of that, when I was reading Tande Periyar's thing, was that he said, when women are given independent rights and men are allowed to let their women be and make their choices, there's a less of an aggressive, intimate relationship. He had talked about his influence, saying that he was reading in newspapers back in those days of women being killed by their spouses because of jealousy and other issues and everything else. And so he said women need to be respected. They need to be let alone. If they want to leave a relationship, they can leave a relationship. They want to stay in a relationship, let them stay in a relationship. And if a man can respect that, he's not going to intimately attack them. There's not going to be domestic violence and crimes. And I can tell you, here in the United States, we turn on the news and we always hear, Florida man shot his wife and kids and killed him because she was divorcing him. Maryland man, Virginia man. You hear all these things about violence in relationships where men have killed their significant other because they have decided to leave the relationship. 2019, people. We're talking about Periyar in the 1930s who's promoting this, and we're in 2019 and we haven't made a lot of progress, or we're going backwards, right? Change is necessary. And approximately 3 million people are sort of affected in that. So, all right. And this just says Tande Periyar, a little blurb about Tande Periyar and his support to women's rights. He was probably one of our most significant advocates for women. And as a Tamil Indian woman living in a foreign country, there isn't a day that I go by without thanking him for the contributions he's made to my life. Yeah, and I really honestly do mean that. On the side note, my brother used to always make fun of me when I was a kid. I have an older brother, by the way. I only have one older brother. He wanted to be an only child, and then I was born. And so he used to say to everybody that he met when I was a kid that she's adopted. We found her on the streets. He'd make me cry, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And then, as I grew older, when I used to say, why do you say I was found in the streets? And he, as a little kid, didn't really say that, but there was so much news of just girl babies being found in places. Garbages and trash cans and places like that. So in his mind, it was easy to find a girl baby outside. So you were found in the street. I wasn't. I was born to my parents. But, but he always said that. But I'm saying, so from a childhood, like my parents' generation was affected by Periyar. And the rights that I got was because my dad's mind and my mom's mind had already changed because they had a leader who showed them the way. Changed their thinking, social thinking. And so, or I could have been the child in a country where there's female genocide and kids being thrown in garbages and everything. I could have been one of those kids if Periyar wasn't there 20 years before my parents. But, so the concept is that it can definitely happen, and it's still happening right now. A lot of the Indian states, girl childs are not preferred. They're either killed or they're thrown away, including even this month there was news that somebody threw their kid away. And dogs rescued him, which basically said dogs were better than humans, but hey. And the very last thing is that for social change, there's several things that need to happen. It's just not the thought. And we all have thoughts of social change. When something bad happens, we all say, hey, let's stop. This is happening, this is bad, and then we go on our way. We don't do anything about it. And so if you are affected, and I see a lot of folks here who spoke about how this irks you, like certain things irk you, like why is this happening? If something irks you, stop. Figure out who you can, find an organization to join. Figure out how can you help make the change happen that needs to happen. First, in order for any change in social justice to happen, you need to figure out what the problem is. And once you figure out the problem, you need to figure out what laws need to be put in place to fix the problem. But that's not the only thing. The next thing is, how do you formulate that plan? And most importantly, and which is where we have failed, is that we have all the laws and everything else as to how to implement it and actually make it work so that the problem that we identified gets eradicated. Yes, I'm done. I hear you. So we want to make sure that, if this is a problem, we need to eradicate them. Let's enforce the laws. And thank you guys for giving me this opportunity.